Hello and welcome to our webinar. My name is Andrew Townsend. I'm with eLearning Brothers. I'm the eLearning video evangelist. Today we're going to be talking about how to get started in Lectora Templates with eLearning Brothers. This webinar will be recorded, so you'll get a copy of it after the webinar if you want to rewatch it or keep that for your record. We have Jennifer Valley with us today from Trivantis. She's a Lectora expert. Jennifer, would you like to say hello?
Hello, everybody.
We were very happy to have you with us today, and we're excited to see your presentation here. If you guys have questions during the webinar, we're ready to answer your questions using the questions panel during the webinar, so feel free to use that questions panel as you need it. We'll go through as many of those questions as we can. We'll have people in the questions panel answering those questions, and from time to time I'll bring those questions up in front of Jennifer for her to answer. And any questions that we don't get to, we'll always look through those and potentially answer those in our webinar recap when we post that next week. But without further ado, Jennifer, I'll go ahead and turn the time over to you. I'll make you the presenter, so hold on one moment.
Sounds great. Hello, everybody, and welcome to this webinar with me. I'm really glad to be presenting alongside of eLearning Brothers. This is going to be a presentation showing you how to use Lectora and eLearning Brothers content in conjunction. For those of you who are not aware, let me go ahead and share my webcam. For those of you who are not aware, Lectura Inspire does include access to the eLearning Brothers content library. And I am the community manager at Trivantis, and we'd be happy to have you over there if you're a current Lectora user. Before joining the company, I was actually an instructional designer and e-learning developer for a couple years, something along the lines of 7. So today we're going to be looking at how to quickly and easily create courses in a short amount of time using just the things that are provided within Lectora and the Inspire tools. I have gone ahead and gone through, and as far as instructional design practices go, I usually like to stick with ADDIE. I've done the analyze and a little bit of the design aspect of it, so I kind of already know what I'm looking for, and I have some of my resources ahead of time. And now we're going to really get into the design aspect of it directly within the program. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off on the Lectora Inspire Getting Started with Lectora screen, and we're going to create a new blank title, and we're going to go along and just try and create this to the best of our ability with the amount of time that we have. So I'm going to go ahead and start off. Like I said, new blank title. We're going to get gutsy and start from scratch. I am going to go ahead and rename this and make sure that it gets saved. So we're going to call this Discover Lectora. And I'm going to make sure that this saves into my preferred location, so I'm ready to go there. And in order to get started, one of the things that I personally like to use that's provided by the eLearning Brothers is in their template library. They have a lot of course starters, template layouts, things like that, interactions for us to start with. So I'm going to go ahead and access the eLearning Brothers content by clicking on the right-hand side in the Media Library over in the Inspire Tools tab. That will open up your access. If you have version 17, you'll have branch track as well as eLearning Brothers content. So I'm going to get into the template library, and if you already have a login, it will recognize you in the system, and it's just as seamless as that. We're going to get into the templates category and kind of start poking around. I know I definitely want something Lectora related, and I definitely want it to be interactive. So I'm going to jump into the Lectura Interactions category. Full disclaimer, I do have a little bit extra access on top of what's provided with Lectora. If you are really interested and able to use all of the resources that the eLearning Brothers does provide, I highly suggest having those in conjunction with you. As far as I'm aware, I believe everything that I picked out today is included in the base without having that extra little push. There's lots of stock assets and things in there that I think you might find interesting and helpful to use if you wanted to go ahead and just bump up your access into the system. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to kind of play around with the concept of teaching somebody how to use Lectora. How meta of us, I completely understand. But the reason for this is that I assume that anyone on the call is either interested in Lectora or already an active user. And this is a great way to kind of play around with a feature that you already are familiar with, or you can also use this when you're going ahead and working with new members of your team to get them started with the program. So I'm going to go ahead and kind of poke around in here. You can roll over them to look at the different little previews here and kind of pick and choose whichever one you're interested in. And there's lots of different interactions that we can choose from. This one on the end here is really catching my eye, the New Stone Learning Steps. And if I click on it, it's going to give me the opportunity to go ahead and download that material into whatever format that I so choose. Because I'm using desktop, I'm going to need the first option, which is Lectora 16+. So I'm going to go ahead and choose that and download it. It's seamless into the program, so as soon as it goes through its little thinking, checking there for a moment, the content is in and you're ready to get started. One of the first things that I like to do is I like to make sure that I go through and kind of familiarize myself with what's being provided. When you're working with something that you haven't necessarily built yourself, it's a good idea to make sure that you fully understand all of the capabilities that are built right into it. And this goes with anything that has to do with e-learning, whether it's Lectora or a template, just anything that you were to pick up on. So I'm going to kind of pop through here, and let's take a look at what's provided within the system. So page 1, we have a course shell. We could use that if we wanted to. There's some menu features, navigation features, things like we would suggest, or expect, I should say. There's also our Discover Learning Steps, and from within here you can see that we're got some little dots or buttons that we can play around with in a Lectora screenshot. How perfect. Not saying that that wasn't planned, but hey, I do have something up here when it comes to thinking forward. In the Title Explorer, there's also some other content, so there's sections 1 through 7. If I take a look at them, I've got this area that kind of displays some content. I can see that there's a couple of different text fields in here as well. So definitely something that we can start playing around with. One of the first things that I like to do within Lectora before I even touch anything is to start getting it into a format in which I would like to work in. So I know for a fact, page 1, I'm not really interested in. If I wanted to make this a traditional course, I definitely could include this, but I'm going to make it so that there's a little bit less scaled down and interaction is more going to be the primary focus. So I'm just going to hit the delete key. So now we can kind of start playing around with and using the material that we plan on actually bringing into our course material here. So I'm going to pop open the Discover Learning Steps page and kind of take a look and see what's going on. So I can see that there's an action group that's completing some actions. We can look at those later. There's an image that's being used as the background. Perfect, that's great. We have our Lectora image and our header features like the triangle and the rectangles and some header text as well. And then all of these buttons, which I'm going to assume each one goes to its proper location in the rest of the title. And if we go ahead and just quickly run this and we click on, let's see, is this button 1? Button 1 does take us to section 1, so that is a good assumption. So I'm going to get back up here, and one of the things that I personally prefer to do within the system is to move all of my objects that I plan on sharing across my whole entire course up at the title level. We recommend that you do this because it acts as kind of like a player within the system, so you don't actually have to make individual changes on each page. So for example, the background image, I'm going to go ahead and just pop this up to the top. I'm also going to look for the rectangle and the triangles, move those up. I will need to make sure that my layering is correct in order for everything to show correctly. I've got my header text. That's going to be shown on each and every single page, and I can play around with that up at the top. Again, this just ensures that whatever changes I make to this material will be shown across each and every single page. A lot less steps to have to complete that way. So I'm going to quickly run through my layering and kind of take a look at everything. So my background image is all the way to the back, so I'm happy with that. My rectangle, I'm good with that for the time being. We can change the color here after a little bit if we would like. I'm not fond of the triangles, but I just feel like they might get in the way with all of the content and space that we have going on. towards the bottom. So I'm just going to go ahead and delete those out just by selecting the delete button on my computer. I'll go ahead and adjust my header so that it's displaying exactly what I'm looking to do, which is to discover Lectora. So I'm actually going to swap out the learning steps with an image by deleting that out and then going up and doing an insert into the program. And like I said, I have some of the resources available ahead of time just to make sure that this presentation runs a little bit smoothly. So I'm going to grab my Lectora logo, and we can kind of place it in here. We could play around with the font. If we wanted to make it a little bit different in between the two, we could change this to white so that there's a little bit of difference in between. I lost my brand because it's not at the right layer. One of the things you do need to keep in mind is that the layering, the very, very back is up towards the top of anything structural-wise in Lectora, and anything towards the front is towards the bottom of the list, kind of like stacking things on top of each other. So I'm going to make sure that those are set up correctly so that they're going to work well for me. Once I've done that, I can go ahead and start looking. I'm going to assume that each and every single one of these assets is on the individual pages as well. So for section 1, it is. So I can just go ahead and delete these out. It looks like the background and then this top is the only thing we're going to need to worry about. I'm going to go through and get rid of those real quick. So again, you're going to want to clean up that material and get it into a format in which you're comfortable to start working in, and also to use some Lectora best practices as you're going through and using the system as well. Having everything up at the top is going to guarantee that we have one place to edit all of our course-wide material. The other thing that you can do within the system to make sure that the content is set up and ready to go at a title level before we get into the individual pages is to head on up to the design ribbon and make any conscious choices from here as well. So we have our title set up. We can choose some options in page size. We have themes and backgrounds. It actually might be a good idea if we swap out the background for an actual Lectora image background. So all I need to do is get into this area and select from the image dropdown that I want asset 02. And now I don't even need this. The reason why I personally prefer the title background to be set up that way is because when you get into responsive course design, which leads into mobile learning, it scales appropriately and kind of shifts the material around nicer than having just a static image in the background. I can also make some decisions when it comes to the default text style. We of course always recommend that you use web-friendly fonts like Arial, but if I wanted to go ahead and make sure that all of my font was coming in and I was using probably 14 is going to work for us. We do have that limited space down at the bottom. We can go ahead and set that up. And I can change my default font color, my hyperlink color, make everything bold. The system does go through and do kind of a little check here for us. The only other thing that I'm seeing is that because we removed page 1, we are limited when it comes to navigation. So I think I'm going to put some navigation back into the course. I'm going to go ahead and do just a standard button from the stock library. Again, we're trying to use only what's provided within Lectora and by the eLearning Brothers content. I'm going to do black because it matches with our theme pretty nicely. And then my personal favorite is the road sign or stamp ones. So I'm going to do the back and the next. You can hold both of them by selecting the control key and then bring them in by selecting OK. I'm just going to pop these down in the lower right-hand corner and left-hand corner respectively, just so that they're somewhere and I can always adjust them later. From here we can really start making decisions and changes based on what we're looking for in our training material. One of the things that I personally learned while at the Lectora User Conference, which was in May of this year in Cincinnati, Ohio, by the keynote speaker Carl Kapp, is that there's nothing wrong with actually getting in and forcing your learner to do something or interact with your course right away. And I really like that idea because it really gives you this whole sink or swim mentality and test their knowledge ahead of time. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to create a new page at the beginning of my course and do a quote-unquote pretest. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new blank title, and we can work from here. I'll call it my pretest, making sure to do a Control-S or save every so often. And I'm going to get back into my Inspire tools because there is something we can use within the system to make that a little bit easier. In addition to templates and Cutout People libraries and things like that, there is also an interaction builder within the system. What the interaction builder does is it gives you the opportunity to create games or interactivities that you can place within your course really easily. So if we get into the interaction editor, we can kind of start playing around and looking at the different options that are available. One thing to note is that Lectora does play best with HTML, so we are looking for an HTML5 instead of a Flash output. I'm not looking at adding any flashes into my course today. So if you poke around in the left-hand side, the first step that you're going to need to do is to select your interaction. So you can see that there are games and quizzes, timelines, stairs, lots of different things to help speed up your development process. What we're going to do today is we're going to actually take advantage of one of the games and bring those in and have them learn something as they're going through. Looking at all the ones that are available in HTML5, I'm personally into fishing, especially when it's summertime. So let's go ahead and do the fishing game. I'm going to go ahead and create now. And all it's going to have you do is go through and bring in any information that you need into your content. As I mentioned, I did go through ahead of time and kind of create some things for me. So looking at my second screen, I do have a question and answer key that I created, which is going to make it a little bit easier for us to go through. It's thinking about opening it. It's thinking. One of the things that's really a great idea to do before you actually get into the system is make sure that you have any text that you want to have reviewed by your subject matter expert or anyone at your organization typed out, because A, you can get it into your reviewer's hand quicker, and B, you can copy and paste instead of actually having to type within the system. So that is definitely helpful. I don't know why this is taking a minute to load, bring it open. Let me see if I have it hiding underneath something. And this also gives me an opportunity to check to see. I'm not seeing anything in the chat field quite yet, so feel free to ask any questions. I'm happy to answer anything as we're going through and creating this material. There we go. So here's my pretest document and kind of what it looks like. I have my welcome text, my questions, my answers, and I can pass it along and use it. So I'm going to pop that over into my second screen, and we'll go ahead and use this by just copying and pasting as needed. So for the intro text, I'm going to go ahead and replace what's existing by just doing a paste, remove the bullets. And it says, welcome to the pretest. Let's check your knowledge on the 5 main areas of Lectora before getting started. We're going to do 5 true or false questions. Nothing too complicated, and we're not going to have any distractors in our questions by having multiple choice options or anything like that. So it'll be relatively easy on them as far as, you know, our level of development goes. So I'm going to go ahead and get in here. And we'll need to get into question 1 to begin with. So again, we're following along on the left-hand side of the interaction builder. It's really easy to follow along with. First thing I'm going to need to do is select what kind of question type I want, which is true or false. Get in here and do my question body text with a quick copy and paste to make myself make everything a little bit easier. The correct answer in this case is true. I could have copied and pasted it if I wanted to, but honestly, it's one word. It's not going to hurt me. So question 2, repeat the process over again. There are going to come times in your training where the content becomes a little monotonous with creation. One of the things that I personally love to do is to listen to music while I'm in Lectora. That just helps me zone into the system a little bit better. So hopefully you're allowed to listen to music where you are as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and go questions.
We have we have a few questions here.
Okay, I'm going to keep firing away at this and then try and multitask at the same time.
Okay, sounds good. Tamara asks, is there a certain format you follow when creating the question and answer bank that's a best practice?
So when I usually do mine, I will write everything out into a text document like I did before. I make sure to put bolding in some of my text so that you can see the difference in between like the header or the question numbers. And then I usually have it set up where the answer is at the end. I've also seen people bold or italicize the answer from the number of options that are available. As long as you kind of pick something, consistently use it, and then maybe include some instructions up at the top, if you have a new SME that you're bringing into the process, you should be good to go, for sure.
Okay, awesome. Another question from John. Where can we find resources online about this topic, these kinds of things? John, I'll answer that one. We're going to be sending out an email following this webinar that will include a link to the webinar so you can watch it again. It'll also include a bunch of other free stuff, including Jennifer's finished product, so you can kind of see what's going on around here. If you're looking for other resources, you can always check out Lectora's or Trivantis' site and look at their community. You can also come to eLearning Brothers and look up our knowledge base as far as other tips and tricks for this kind of material. And then we have another question from Jim. Do all Inspire users have access to the interaction templates we saw earlier, or do I need to add these separately?
No, all the Inspire tool package includes immediate access to the eLearning Brothers content as far as the Interaction Builder, Template Library, and Cutout People Library goes. The interactions themselves are directly linked to Lectora, and then what I was talking about potentially purchasing in addition is the ability to get access to other authoring tools, templates, and then there's also a stock asset library that's available. But with your purchase, you should be able to directly link the two of them together by signing in and getting into the program and have all these resources available to you.
All right, great. Those are all the questions we can do for now, but I'm sure we'll get more as we go on.
Perfect. Well, that actually works out well because I was able to get my my whole game here kind of situated. So I just repeated the processes over again. All you need to do when you're done with it is to do a save. I'm going to call this my game for webinar. And then I'm going to go ahead and publish this into HTML5. And again, it takes a couple quick seconds for it to load and bring into the system. And we have a web window that we can work with. Web window embeds content into it, kind of like an embed code if you're familiar with HTML. And it gives you the opportunity to use your content and work within it. Whenever I'm using web windows or things from the interaction builder, one of the things that I like to do is just clean up the content so that it's the primary focus. So you can do that by using the concept of inheritance in Lectora. It's essentially saying at a certain structural level within my course, in this case page, I don't want certain things to be shown. There's nothing wrong with it. There's usually going to be a couple opportunities and chances for you to take advantage of this when you're developing. All you have to do is get into the structural levels properties, in this case the page properties, and get into the inherit settings. And I'm going to choose whether or not I want all, no, or specific objects. I'm going to choose specific ones because I want to make sure that I keep my back and next button, but I'm going to move everything else over into the excluded category. If you pay attention to the background and you're not really familiar with Lectora, you'll see that there are some things that are popping up here still. Once I click OK, they're all gone. In order to test this, I do need to run it in the browser. I personally do Chrome, and you should be able to hear the noise coming from this. But that is essentially the game, and they'll be able to play with that and use it as necessary. There are ways of linking into that content and making this pretest a little bit more time-consuming, not time-consuming, but challenging. You could add a time element to it. You could make them pass with a certain score of some sort, and that's definitely something you can do to take it to that next level. But we're just talking about some pretty basic development here today in the time frame that we have. So I'm going to go ahead and move on. So now that we have our pretest in order, we can start working on our next page, which is to discover Lectora. I'm going to go through, and if you remember the intro to our pretest, there are 5 areas that we're going to talk about here today. As you probably noticed, there are 7 buttons and 7 pages, and we don't need those. So I'm going to start off by deleting them out. So button 6 is gone, and so is button 7, as well as section 6 and section 7. I don't need those. Those are going to be things that I don't need to worry about at this time. So I'm going to go ahead and set these up so each one is directly linked to the particular area of the screen that I'm interested in. I have these written down just to make sure that I don't mess myself up. So 1 is the quick access toolbar. 2 is going to be the ribbon, and you can make sure you're selecting the right one by checking in your Title Explorer. 3 is the Title Explorer. And 4 is going to be our media library, which we've already been accessing to get to the eLearning Brothers content. And then 5 is going to be our work area or our canvas area, and we can kind of play around with it from there. There are an action group in here that's being run, and you can take a look at all of the action groups. I can read this and note that it's actually setting the button states for the buttons that are provided within the system. So there is essentially 3 different button states that are set up that once it's been clicked or visited or hovered over, it's going to change color, and it's also going to take us where exactly we need to go. And that's perfectly fine. I'm going to keep that in place and kind of roll with it that way. So from here, I can start kind of refining down my content even further if I would like. One of the things that I personally like to do is at the title level, I'm going to go ahead and insert in my colors for this course. So I have my Trivantis color palette that I'm going to bring in, and I'll pop it off into the working area within Lectora. What that does is it gives you direct access to your colors. If you're in Lectora, then you can use the eyedropper tool to pull them into the system. You can also fill in the RGB value in the custom menu as well. So you have access to those at any given point in time. I can now go ahead and change this color to actually match the coloring pattern of our material. This really gives you the opportunity to make sure that you have a unified, somewhat branded look, even if you don't have branding standards in place at your organization. Always want to keep in mind your color palette, your use of fonts and images. Just make good graphic design choices. And if you're not really sure on how to do that, there are some blogs and things that are available either on Trivantis' side or eLearning Brothers' side, as well as just general things that you can look up and access as well. I did a lot of courses.
I've got 2 questions real quick.
Sure.
One is, can you go over how you would handle users that would pass the pretest? What logic would you use to determine passing scores?
So I would not associate a test to it, me personally, but if you wanted to, you definitely could. And you can set up a condition on your next button that would say, you know, on click, go to the next page if their pretest score was appropriate. And that would probably be my preferred method of stopping them there. If I wanted them to retake it until they got the ability for them to move forward, then you always have, with conditions, an if statement and an else statement, and in that else statement I would type up, please repeat the pretest, and you need to get a score of whatever to continue. That would probably be my approach to it. There's definitely some other ways that you could do it, but that's typically how I would.
Okay. And then one other question from Elizabeth. Can you demonstrate how to get the color palette again?
Yeah, I just did an insert and an image process, which is on your insert ribbon in the add image group. You can find color palettes either with your marketing department if you have to go with company's colors. I chose to do Trivantis's just because it's a Trivantis webinar-ish, in conjunction with eLearning Brothers. But you can also find and make your own color palettes as well. I will either use like a website like ColorSeed, or I'll go searching on Pinterest. And then the one program that I've consistently used over the years, it used to be called Adobe Color, but now I think it's called Cooler, K-U-L-E-R. I'm not 100% sure on that one, but if you do like Adobe Color in the search field in Google, it'll come up with it. And it gives you the opportunity to make complementary and threes and quads and all of those different combinations.
It's I don't know how you'd pronounce it, Cooler, but it's K-U-L-E-R. Thank you,
Yep.
Becky, for getting that into us.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it. I had it right spelling-wise, but I don't know how to say it either. So
that's all the questions for now.
Yeah, not a problem. And there's no harm in using additional resources that are provided to you that are not e-learning based. There's nothing to say that. I get a lot of inspiration on Pinterest from PowerPoint templates. There's actually some really nice ones out there, and if you put that into the keyword search, you'll find a lot of things to kind of go along with and play with. If you're not choosing to use something that's already pre-built in Lectora or in eLearning Brothers. So I'm going to go ahead and bring in the next aspect of what is available in the Inspire Tools library, which is our characters. So I'm going to go ahead and move my image and my buttons just by selecting all of them and scooch it over to the right. And I'm going to bring in a character kind of pointing and playing around with the concept of, you need to learn how to do this. So to get at the characters, we're going to jump back into the Inspire Tools. I don't need to be in the interaction builder anymore. I actually need the template library. And up in this top category, there's also a Cutout People heading that I can play around with. There's a wide variety of different people, and what I really appreciate about the library that is set up right now is it really covers a large gamut of people that you would potentially look into or add into your courses. Age, sexes, races, outfits, poses. The list is quite large when it comes to content. So we're going to go ahead and look into the industry of business, because we're assuming that we're going to be teaching somebody in the business industry how to use Lectora. With that premise, it's not going to be anybody teenager or child aged, so you can go through and use the filter options up at the top. I'm going to look for somebody who's wearing a polo, and we've narrowed it down to one person. We've got Ursula. So as you can see, when I click on Ursula, there's a series of images where she is has her back to us. She's in three-quarter pose, half pose. Wow, my theater knowledge is actually helping me at this time. And we can kind of poke through here and see what exactly we're looking for. I want something pointing, and I definitely want her smiling. Those look a little angry. So I'm going to go ahead and go with this one. She comes in a couple different sizes, all PNGs, meaning transparent backgrounds, which is great. So I'm going to go ahead and download this in at the smallest size because we don't have a lot of space to work with. So I can reduce her down into where I want her to be, which is going to be over on the left-hand side of this course. And she's pointing in the wrong direction currently. Not a big deal. Position and size ribbon, we can flip her horizontally and she's good to go here. So I'm going to go ahead and just reduce her size down. At this point, you can do a couple different things within the system. You can have her providing instructions. You can have her say, good job, now click on the next one. Or just acting as emotional support of some sort. It's really up to you as to how you want to use your characters. When you include characters in your e-learning course, you're typically going to follow one of two paths. Either that person is an expert or that person is at the same level. So once you establish one of those two paths, you do need to stick with it. We have an ebook that's available out on the Trivantis website about storytelling, adding characters, using story arcs, emotions, antagonists, and things like that. So if you'd like a good e-learning read, head on over to trivantis.com/ebooks, and it's our one that's storytelling, and then there's a secondary title that I'm not necessarily remembering. Sorry, marketing team, but it's a great resource for you. I'm even in it, guys, and I can't even remember what the name is off the top of my head, but that's okay. We'll go ahead and pop Ursula in here later just for some continuity, but for right now, let's go ahead and continue on through the course, just taking a look at the time. Let's power through one or two of these sections, and then I might cheat a little bit so we can get to the next part of the training, because essentially a lot of these sections are going to be the same. So section 1 is our quick access toolbar. So I'm going to get in here and I'm going to poke around and see what I would like. I have an image placeholder, I've got some buttons, there's definitely some shapes in here. This is probably assuming that there's a multi-select in my image, which there's not. So I'm going to go ahead and just delete those out because I don't need them. With the multi-image selection, it's also assuming that I might have more than one text. I don't have that either, so we're just going to delete that out. And here we have a pretty basic format that we can kind of go with. So I'm going to go ahead and add my image into the system of exactly what we're talking about, which is the quick access toolbar. And then I can go ahead and if you hold down the Alt key, I don't remember that one, you can move it independently from a group, and I can resize it. And of course, if I were not in a time constraint, I would make sure that this was directly aligned within the system. There are alignment tools available up on your home ribbon in the Arrange section in the line drop-down, and there's also it down in the bottom bar here as well. You have center, horizontal, and vertical with one item selected, and then a large variety of options that come when you have more than one item, so 2 or more selected. So now that we've gotten our left-hand side situated, we can go ahead and change this color. Let's go ahead and just go down the line. So let's start with blue, and that's going to be our color or theme for this particular page. So it's not actually step 1, it's actually going to be quick access toolbar. My font is too big. I'm just going to go ahead and scale it down. And I noticed that my image is missing because I was not paying attention to my layering. Been in here the system for 7 years, and I still do it every once in a while. No shame in your game. So all you got to do is make sure you move that up to the top. So for the quick access toolbar, I'm going to actually take advantage of the information center that's provided within Lectora. It is the best kept secret that should not be secret. It's available to you within the system using the F1 key at any given point in time, and there's a whole bunch of different information in here about each and every single thing within Lectora. So for example, if we're teaching how to navigate the workspace, I can tour the interface, and you'll see that here we have our areas that we're working with. There's more than 5 listed here, but I kind of bumped it down for you guys to make it a little bit easier. So using the quick access toolbar, I can go ahead and grab this text, and this is what I'm going to use within my material. Again, use whichever resources that you have available to build your courses, whether that be documentation, web pages, existing presentations, and things like that, whatever you would like. And you'll notice that when I pasted in, I left the first letter in there, and that's because I like to have my formatting kept so I don't have to replace it. And I did make sure to do a Control-Shift-V, which is a paste unformatted, to keep that formatting off from Word and put it into Lectora. Usually helps with the weird ghost spaces and things that could potentially show up within your course material. One of the things that I like to personally do is I had a college professor who would go, this is on the test, so I'm going to and bold what is on the test, which is actually the bar contains handy default options to save, undo, and redo. along with the ability to add and remove choices or options of your choice. That information to me is the most relevant, and that's their takeaway for this page. By bolding it, we're bringing attention to it, both visually and within the actual text that's being provided, and it's one way of really making sure people paying attention to that key material that you're focusing on. It's the same principles of catching people's eye when you're doing marketing by having subheaders or things bolded or putting images in particular locations in your web page. So that is essentially it for our first page of the course material. For the second page, I am going to go ahead and just briefly follow along with the same process, except for I'm actually going to keep 2 of the materials so you can see what it's going to look like if there's a multi-select going on. So I don't need button 3. I do need shapes 1 and 2. And I'm going to follow along with the same process again, just a little bit differently this time. So my image placeholder, number 2 is going to be our ribbon area. So I'm going to get into the ribbon, grab my image, bring it into the system, adjust the sizing as necessary, and move it where I want it to go. In this case, there's actually 2 different kinds of ribbons that are in Lectora. There's a standard ribbon, and then there's something called the contextual ribbon or the properties ribbon. And for, I didn't get my layering right, let me fix that. So for the regular ribbon, these 2 need to be linked together. It's actually home, design, insert, test and survey, tools, and view. So I'm going to make sure that my buttons are going over all of these, and then I can have my shapes where I want them to go as well. Oops, grab too many things here. Come on now. That was my fingers, not Lectora. And then I'm going to go ahead and place this one into the properties ribbon. And again, these are 2 different areas. With being able to use this kind of content as is already, if I were to get in here and just preview this, you'll notice that the step 1 and step 2 are going to show the material. I think I messed up the layering on that one. But they're set up to show the feedback for each one of these directly linked in with each other, so that formatting is kind of already in there. Instead of finishing up this page, I'm going to quickly jump into the concept of a speech bubble, and then I'm going to bring in pre-built pages for the rest of the course material, because we wanted to give you an opportunity to kind of pick your own adventure as to how we finish up this course. So one of the things that you can do is that once you have a character established, like Ursula, you can turn them into like avatars or speech bubbles or floating heads, and use them within your course material that way as well. So I've gone ahead and I've created her. In Inspire, you do have access to Snagit, so you can do that relatively easily in the system. I really wish there was a design wand like there is in Adobe products, but there isn't currently. And we're going to have her telling everybody on this particular page that you need to click both. Again, it's getting to be crunch time, so I'm just trying to make sure I'm getting the material in, but I would do probably a little bit more wording and things like that into the system. So to see a completed version of this page, I do have the pages set up as library objects, so I can go ahead and grab my ribbon. So here's a completed version where we added in the text and changed the colors. And then the next page is going to be the Title Explorer. So I'm going to find that one. And down here. And library objects are simply things within the system that you have saved and want to reuse. It can be any structural level within the system, and you can use them to speed up your development process as well as doing things with the eLearning Brothers content, and it also helps with making sure that you're doing things consistently across projects. One of the things that it does do is it does mess up the did I just do that wrong? I think I did. It does mess up the actions potentially within the system, so you are going to need to be conscious of that. I'm just going to make sure I have everything that I need back in here again. So we have our quick access toolbar, our ribbon, our title explorer, our media library, and our work area all in there now. So I'm going to delete these ones out. So all I did essentially for 3, 4, and 5 is I repeated my process for 1 over again. Bringing in those images, changing the background color, changing the title color, bringing in my text, again, just using it from the information center and bolding. You can see how quickly and easily that you can make. When I wasn't doing this in webinar format and I was actually, talking myself through the process and everything, I was able to complete this within an hour, so you're just going to have to kind of trust me on that one. But at this point, we kind of have 2 different avenues that we can go into. So what I'm going to suggest we do is, Andrew, can we go ahead and launch that poll and have everybody kind of pick what ending that they would like to see out of this webinar, and I can answer any questions while they're answering the poll question.
Sure thing. Here's the poll. Go ahead and click on the answer that you want. Choose your own adventure. Are you more concerned about seeing this course include a test or SCORM compliance? Some questions that we've had. You've actually been answering all of them pretty well as we go. We had a question a few minutes ago about the difference between the blue and the red rectangles on the buttons. That might be something you want to demonstrate after this poll. I'll keep this poll open for about another 5 seconds. Last chance to dive in and answer these questions. All right, and here's the results of that poll. Looks like we've got a few more people that want to see SCORM.
Perfect. And the completed version of this course material that I did create for you guys does have both endings. So not only will I be sharing SCORM compliant material, it will also include a test as well. So since we don't have SCORM compliance in it, we're going to actually have to fake it to make it. Essentially, when you're creating a SCORM compliant course within Lectora, there is two of two things that you need. At a bare minimum. To meet SCORM compliance, we need to, technically 3, we need to turn on SCORM compliance first. We also need to make sure that we have an exit button, and then the last thing is some type of testing feature. And like I said, we can fake it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn on SCORM compliance now. It's really simple. All you need to do is select the title at your title level, and you can get up into your title options. In the title type, you can go from a standard to an AICC or SCORM for LMS. When I go ahead and turn that on and select OK, it creates an assignable unit for me. An assignable unit is also known as a SCO or SCO, depending on if you're doing AICC or SCORM compliance. It is essentially a capsule that's grabbing all of your course information and properly passing things back and forth with your LMS. That's the not-so-technical explanation. You can adjust how or what information is shared with your learning management system by getting up into its properties, into the information tab. I personally don't like to play with anything in here. Kind of makes me nervous, other than my minimum point score and my mastery score, which is what you need to pass. And in this case, it's going to be 100%. Whether they pass or fail to be able to get credit within the system. The next thing that I'm going to need to do, like I said, is we need to turn it on and then get an exit button. You do have to have the ability for your learner to exit their course no matter where they are within it. That is something that is required, and the exit in your browser does not count. So easiest way to do that is we can include a stock button that matches the rest of the buttons that we've been using, which is the black stamp, and just pop it up into the corner. And we're good to go from there. The buttons within the system come preset with action, so this one is set up to exit or close the title, which meets SCORM compliance. So the last thing that we need to do is we need to have a test. Just so that you guys are aware, I will show you what the test is going to kind of look like. So here is the no test. I want the test, and I can bring it into the system. And we made a 5-question test with a couple different question types, and you can take that and play around with it if you would like. If I want to have a no testing option, what I typically do is I go into and grab a chapter, and I'm going to call this no test, and congratulations. And then I'll insert in some type of message of some sort, like congratulations. I always type that wrong, so hopefully that's spelled correctly. You've passed this course. Please exit and return back to your LMS. You can include as fancy of a message as you would like. Here's an opportunity to, pop the confetti. You can add your character back in again, so we can have Ursula kind of like, yay, congratulations, or whatnot. So I'll leave some space over here so she can actually be there if we want to. And I definitely want to make sure that they can only exit out, so I can use my inheritance again and say remove, back, and next, and just go strictly to an exit option only. To fake your testing features, you need to make sure that you have 2 actions in the system, and they're really easy to complete. All you need to do is insert an action in, and you're going to actually be modifying a variable. And these variables are reserved, meaning that they are coming from somewhere, which in this case is going to be passing back and forth with Lectora and your LMS. So in order to change those, we need to modify the variable. And what we're looking for is AICC lesson status. That is a very, very important one. And you need to set it equal to a particular value. So in this case, it's typically pass, complete, or completed with or without capital P's and C's. It depends on your LMS. Your LMS administrator or account representative should know that information. So that is the first variable that would potentially need to be passed. If your course is also set up in your LMS to collect a score, we need to do that as well. Just as a disclaimer, because this has AICC at the beginning does not mean it's AICC only, it's actually for both. So if I go ahead and do this, I can actually update the AICC score and set it equal to 100. So essentially, as soon as they access the congratulations page, again, if the test was not here, that's where they would navigate to naturally after the last page of the course, and then they would be able to move on. So that does meet SCORM compliance. If I were to go and try and SCORM this, I know from practice there's a whole bunch of actions that I did not properly go through and delete in sections 1 through 5. So that is the only thing that's keeping me from SCORM. There's no errors or warnings when it comes to SCORM compliance. So we've essentially made a course that's ready to be uploaded if necessary. So with the last couple minutes, I can go ahead and answer any questions anybody has. I can start off. There was the one about the double buttons, I believe. Do you want to go back to that?
Yes, the difference between the blue and the red rectangles on the buttons. We also had a question about modifying the size of selection buttons.
Okay. Yeah, so the buttons within here are actually set up so that there's a button in a shape, and the system is kind of doing different things with it. You can look at the different actions that are provided. So on mouse click, it's disabling the button and showing the shape, and then it's also it's hiding the shape and showing the button and showing the feedback and the text. So this is just essentially a way of setting up a custom style button if you wanted to. The same thing can kind of be accomplished with your transparent buttons with background or borders, or to use like a standard like information button like an eye and then place it into the course as well. If we wanted to make any changes to these buttons or whatnot, there's just the adorners that you can go ahead and select and grab. And I just move these around and kind of place them exactly where I want it to go to make it a little bit easier on myself. Again, if I was working on this course material, I definitely want to line everything up, make sure, clicked away, make sure everything was kind of, looking exactly how I wanted it to, and ready to go for my audience.
Okay, another question I've got here. If you're new to Trivantis Lectora, what do you recommend for learning or getting up to speed on how to use Lectora effectively? Books, training, what would you recommend for great training material in book form and in training form?
So as far as like book form for what you can get off of Amazon, there's not really anything that I could recommend. There used to be an individual called Dr. Lectora, and he would put things out regularly, but he since retired from the industry. As far as reading material goes, however, the Trivantis community and the blog that we run as well has a lot of good material out there. There's videos, articles, Inspiration Wednesdays, lots of different things that you can poke around in. I'd highly recommend the Lectora 101 series, which is me talking you through about 20 different things that you might want to do as soon as you get into Lectora, and they're all under 6 minutes. The Trivantis company does offer synchronous and on-site training available to you as well. If you want to come and join me for the synchronous training, I do help conduct that, and it's essentially a 6-hour training session split up over 2 days where we teach you some of the basics at definitely a slower pace than we did today, and you can actually follow along and build it with us and everything. And if you're interested in that, you can go to the store on the Trivantis website or talk to your account representative.
Awesome. Another question is, when setting variables, variable values, you'd have to know how to, let's see, it doesn't seem that they come in drop-down to select form, and when you use these variables, do they work correctly in an LMS?
I think you're talking about user-generated variables, which are ones that you personally create. There is a difference in between variables that are provided. There's essentially 2 main categories. Your reserved variables are going to be in the drop-down, available to you at any time, and they do automatically communicate. As long as the LMS ones, you do have to have SCORM compliance turned on. And make sure that your LMS supports that information that's being pulled in between the 2 systems. As far as the other aspect of it, or the user-defined, those are ones that you're going to make your own. They're not going to show up in the drop-down, and they won't go anywhere unless you set it up to, JavaScript over into your LMS or whatnot. There does require some more connectivity in between the 2, and that's because it's more or less meant for your development to make it so that you can put in stipulations on actions and things like that within the system. I think I answered your question. If I did not, please go ahead and get into more detail on it if we have time in the questions panel.
We're running out of time. That may be one that if that wasn't correctly answered or fully answered, I'm going to take the screen back if that's all right, Jennifer.
Yeah, go ahead.
And what I want to show everybody is, let's see right here. Waiting for screen. Okay. Oh my goodness, the GoToWebinar is in the way of everything. Okay, can you see this yet? Okay, come on, load. Yeah. There we go. Okay, so this is what you want to see. There's contact information there on the left to reach out with support questions for Trivantis, info@trivantis.com. You can also go to www.trivantis.com. If you have questions about our templates or about the interaction builder or anything like that, you can call us at the number on the screen or send us an email to support@elearningbrothers.com. There was one other question for you, Jennifer. How does one register for Inspiration Wednesday sessions?
The Inspiration Wednesday sessions, you can get notified for them by subscribing to our blog. and then you'll get notifications via your email. Otherwise, if you go to the website, you can sign up and register for them whenever you feel like it. So I think it's trivantis.com/webinar or webinars. Not 100% sure. If Christy, if you can get that link and respond back to that question, that'd be great.
What we want to do, like I already mentioned, we're going to send it out an email in 2 hours to everybody that's on this webinar. It'll include this contact information. We'll include a few other links to some great material for you to use in your future projects or when planning out your next project. We're also going to include this project, the project you just worked on now. Is that right, Jennifer?
Yep. I'm going to clean it up a little bit. One of the things that I would recommend doing is to remove the colors, go through your testing process, get into a review software like ReviewLink. I'm going to do that real quick here in the next couple hours, and then by the time that email goes out, the material should be available for preview and download. Download does require an membership or registration to the Trivantis community.
Awesome. So yeah, we'll send out that email. It'll contain all of that stuff. And again, if you have questions that weren't answered, we'll try to either get to those via a webinar recap, which will be posted later in the week on the eLearning Brothers blog, or you can send those questions into Trivantis or eLearning Brothers at the contact information on the screen. Again, thank you, Jennifer, for this great webinar. This has gone great. We've had a lot of great information here. And everybody else, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.